Welcome to the Progressive Women's Leadership Podcast, where our mission is to advance the women's leadership movement in a way that is empowering, supportive, and bold. I'm your host, Michael Brown, and my guest today on the show is Robin Pollack. Robin has 20 years of experience as an attorney and is the founder and principal of Trellis Consulting, an organization that specializes in women's leadership and development services to companies through substantial, practical programming and events. Robin has been actively involved in women's issues for over 15 years, creating the first women's networking group for the Turnaround Management Association's Philadelphia chapter, where she currently serves on the board of directors as vice president of marketing. She has lectured extensively on issues of women's networking and leadership and created and currently co-chairs the Turnaround Management Association's Global Network of Women's Committee. Welcome, Robin. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. That's quite a background.
Well, thank you.
Done some amazing things. I'm really excited to jump in and talk about some of them.
Yeah, I think this will be great.
Well, to kick things off, I'd love to talk. I know we talked a little bit about it, and you have a great story here. And I'd love for you to talk about how you started the Women's Networking Group for the Turnaround Management Association's Philadelphia chapter.
Sure. So just a little bit of background. The Turnaround Management Association is an international association of professionals that are involved in the turnaround industry. So it's bankruptcy lawyers, financial advisors, accountants, investment bankers, appraisers, everybody that's involved sort of in that distressed company industry. So that's just sort of gives you a little framework. So when I was a young associate, probably somewhere around 1998 or so, I'm dating myself, but I was a young associate, and I was encouraged by the other members of my bankruptcy group at my law firm. It was looked at, and it still is, really the premier organization for people in that industry. So I said, okay, I'll join. And one of the first meetings I went to was a breakfast meeting at the Union League. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to the Union League, but it is, I think, it was right around that time they started letting women attend, events at the Union League. That's actually a joke, but it was very masculine. It was before that. It was very masculine, very staid, very dark. So I walked in and, and it's the dark wood paneling on the walls. And the hallway, when you walk in, is lined with huge portraits of men. So there's sort of these men sort of bearing down on you as you walk through the hallway. So I walked into the breakfast meeting for my first, one of my first meetings. And it was literally like those men in the hallway and those portraits had jumped off the walls and they were standing in this room, older men, the dark suits, milling around eating breakfast, and very, very few women. I mean, you could literally count the number of women in that room, on one hand. So I, as a young, female associate, I felt, uncomfortable. There wasn't really anybody there that looked like me. There really wasn't anybody there that I, could connect with. So, after a couple of events like this that I kept going to, I said, this is crazy. Something has to change. We really need more women represented. So it was at that point, that I created the first women's networking group for our Philadelphia chapter.
So you decided to create this chapter. I mean, did you talk to the folks there? Were there people who were encouraging you? How did that play out?
Well, I kind of went to the president, the person who was president at the time, and I said, do we have something like this? Have we ever had something like this? And they said, no, not really. But they were very supportive. I mean, they looked at it as a way to get more members. They looked at it, as a type of diversity initiative. And remember, this was a really long time ago when diversity and inclusion was not as much, of a hot button issue as it is today. But they were very, very supportive. And one of the women who was in the TMA chapter sort of helped guide me a little bit, since she had more experience and had been a longer time member. So really what we did was we just started putting names of women together that we knew in the industry. We looked at bankruptcy, attorneys that we knew, because there were more, and there still are more female bankruptcy attorneys than there are, let's say, investment bankers. There's not that many women in investment banking globally. So we really started pooling lists together. And in the beginning, we created sort of soft events that we thought women would want to attend. And the concept was get these women out, get them meeting each other, get them networking with each other so that they would feel more comfortable integrating into the larger chapter events with men. So I think the first event we did was like a cocktail party at a restaurant in Philadelphia. And over the years, we did, again, that sort of soft events, like a cocktail party, a spa event. We did some stuff at the Franklin Institute, art exhibits. We did a fashion show one year, really all with the idea of creating things that women would want to attend so that they would come and meet each other.
So at this first one that you had, what was your pitch? So this was not existing before. It probably wasn't even something that they had heard about that it exists. What was your pitch to them to get them to come?
What we did was we actually sent out real invitations in the mail. So we would put together these really, cool tri-fold invitations, and we would actually send them out in the mail instead of everything getting caught in people's email. So it stood out a little bit. And I think the first one, we probably said something like, come join us as we launch, the first women's networking group for the Turnaround Management Association. I think women at the time were looking for things like this, as they still do. But, they were really looking for ways to connect with other women. So it wasn't, really so much of a hard sell. And creating an event around either a venue or an activity or something that women wanted to come to certainly helped. I remember one of the things we did was at a brand new restaurant. It was Amada, actually, and it was literally right at the beginning of when Amada first opened. And there was a write-up, I think, in Philadelphia Magazine about how cool Amada was, and we had already booked to have an event there. So people looked at it as an opportunity to go to like a hot new restaurant. And so that was enticing to them. And I think we actually did it with another women's organization, a women in banking group. And we had 100 women at Amada that night.
I thought that was interesting what you said, that you partnered with another group. So, it's an interesting takeaway for folks listening, is that partnering can help when you're starting out. You don't have to think about it as going at it alone.
No, absolutely. It helps in these kinds of situations, if you're starting a women's initiative or you're even running a women's initiative for a professional organization, certainly partnering with a complementary, another complementary professional organization is great. And we still do that now. There's another women's group in the restructuring industry called iWork, and we sometimes partner with them, although the focus of TMA programming has changed substantially. We are no longer really focused on the soft side, and we now provide more of, the soft side of hard skills as opposed to just soft events.
That would be an interesting part of it. How did you transition from one to the other? You were going to, it was lighthearted. You were going to events, things that were for dinner, for art, or something like that. And then you transitioned to these harder hitting type events. How did that play out?
Well, it really happened when I transitioned from running the women's group at the local Philadelphia chapter level to when I started running the women's initiative at the global level. So right now I co-chair the Women's Leadership Initiative at TMA at the national and international level. And that's really when things started to shift, because not that we dictate what all the chapters do, but we suggest what they should do, and we provide programming, and we really give them a direction, because I think what women need now has changed significantly. So whereas when I first started in this space, we really just needed women to come out and meet each other. Now women are out there. Women are more comfortable networking with men, but what they really need are these sort of, harder skills, negotiation and networking and business development and how to build their leadership skills. It's really the training now that women are seeking to help them succeed and rise up the pipeline in whatever industry, whatever organization that they're in. So there's kind of been a shift certainly in my mindset, but I think a shift in sort of the world, because women now want to succeed and they want to be leaders, and they want to rise up and they need the tools and the arsenal. PMA, our focus has changed. And that shift happened, I guess, about 5 years ago, when I started chairing the global initiative. And we decided, we had sort of met certain benchmarks. Years ago, it was important to have women on every panel at national conferences. Well, now that's a foregone conclusion. We don't have to sort of fight for that anymore. So that sort of element, we checked the box there. We wanted to have, cocktail parties for women so that they could meet and network. Well, that's built in now to every annual conference that we have. So we sort of checked the box there. So the kinds of things that we were doing, we sort of achieved, but really we needed to take it to the next level. And that's when that shift happened, because, we're very, very far in the world from being equal in leadership positions. And that's really what we give our women. It's that training that's important now.
That's a great story. I want to go back to a little bit of a personal side and your own career. You're involved in all these different activities, and at some point you decided to go part-time in the legal profession. And that had a lot of challenges, and I would like to talk about that a little bit. So as a starting point, what were the types of support that you needed to succeed in that type of role to go part-time?
Well, I mean, the first thing, I guess, is that you need the support of the law firm, in my case, the law firm or the company or wherever it is that you're seeking, to go on a reduced or flex time or whatever schedule. And again, this was a long time ago, too. This was right after I had my first son, and he is 16 now. So this was, 16 years ago. I went in and had a conversation with the chair of my department. And one of the first things, you've got to make yourself indispensable. That's the crux of the whole thing. You've got to be in a situation where the company is willing to work with you because they know you do good work. They know you do your job well, and they don't want to lose you. And they're afraid if they don't, give you, I don't want to call it an accommodation, but if they don't sort of, look progressively at what, at a part-time situation and at the benefits it can provide, they know that they could potentially lose you, and they don't want to do that. So I think as far as support, obviously you need that support. But I think the other huge component is really a support system at home, because the key to, going part-time or having some type of alternate work arrangement is flexibility. And it's flexibility from both sides. But, for the person that is going on a reduced schedule, that flexibility is key. And in order to have that, you've got to have a support system at home. It's not enough necessarily just to have a nanny. You've got to have a backup, maybe your parents or your in-laws or your spouse, whatever it is. That, I think, to me, is the biggest type of support, the most important type of support that you need. Because things happen. In most jobs, obviously in law, but certainly, in many, many other professions, you're not in a 9-to-5 situation and things come up. There's emergencies, and you want to show, that you are committed and that you're still able to do your job.
That's a great point you made about the support and having the backup. If it's the nanny, it's what happens if it's always plan B. And that's Exactly. How you set yourself up for success.
Exactly.
So there must have been many challenges, both from the organization and from what we hear, internal challenges working through this. Can you talk a little bit about them and how you overcame them?
Certainly, I think no matter how good you are, and I do stress that always doing your job and always doing good work and always showing that you're, committed and indispensable, those are all very, very important factors. But irrespective of that, I still think that there are biases. I still think that if somebody goes on a reduced schedule, there's sort of that, that inherent bias that, maybe you're not as committed, because if you were committed, you'd be working full time. So I think that is a challenge that somebody that is on an alternate work schedule, has to overcome. I also think one of the challenges is that it lengthens your, career path. So you may not be given the same opportunities, if there's travel or if there's late nights. Even if you're willing and able and want to take advantage of those opportunities, the person that is giving those opportunities out may not want to burden you, or, that bias comes in. Sometimes, those opportunities are usurped from people because there's an assumption that they're part-time, they don't want to travel, which may not be the case. So I think you've got to be aware, if you're going to look at an alternate work and, arrangement, that might be, something that you've got to work to overcome. You've got to ask for those, plum assignments. You've got to make it known that you're able to do these things. And you have to be willing to wait, a little bit, because if you are working fewer hours, you're not putting in as much time, let's say, as a full-time counterpart. It naturally flows from that you may, have a longer track. So if you're, looking to make partner, or, a more senior management position or what have you, it may take longer. And if you're willing to wait, it doesn't mean you won't get there, but you may just have to wait. So that's a challenge. And as far as the organization, I think they've got to figure out how to fit, that person into their structure. They may be a little wary of somebody that's looking to do this. So, it takes time to build that relationship. But once they see that, you are there and you are doing your job and everything works well, I think organizations are more likely to allow people to do these kinds of things. And I think it gets easier over time. It just takes a little time to build that relationship. And work-life integration really is an issue for men and women. People think of it typically as a women's issue, and that work-life integration concept has sort of replaced work-life balance. So work-life integration really means that you've got, 7 days a week, 24 hours in the day. How are you going to sort of mesh, your personal life, your family life, your work life, the things you like to do? How does that all mesh together in that time period, that we all have? And of course, you have to sleep. So you've got to factor that in as well. Although some people don't, or some people sleep less. You've got to factor that in. But that's really the new sort of model. So, and again, that impacts men as well. So let's just say you're a guy and, you want to coach your kids soccer, once a week, and, the coaching's at 5 and you're an hour away. You may leave the office at 4, coach, do what you need to do, and then get back on the computer. So it's sort of a new model. So we'll see how, sort of flex time and part-time and this whole work-life integration concept sort of, changes how we live and how we work.
So I want to dig a little deeper on one thing you said, the concept of being the perception or reality of being not as committed. And I think there's two parts to that, and I'd like you to respond to it. The not as committed, so there'll be people, I think you were saying there's people who look at someone who does this and they're going part-time. It's like, oh, they're not as committed, or they'd be there full-time. I think there's an internal component of that also, where there's like, oh, people are looking at me like I'm not as committed, whether it may or may not be true, and how that impacts and how to overcome that sort of self-talk. Did you experience that at all?
Yeah, I definitely think that is part of it. No matter what, deal you cut, you are doing something different than everybody else. So you may, leave at, let's say, 6 o'clock every day, to grab the train to get home, and you see your colleagues, and not necessarily, more senior colleagues. You could see younger colleagues or colleagues at your level, sitting at their desks, killing themselves till 9 or 10 o'clock. So there is that, it's like an internal guilt or some type of dialogue where you're thinking, oh, these people think I'm a slacker, or here I am walking out the door at 6 when I know they're going to be here all night. It's difficult. I guess you've got to think, this is the choice I've made. So yes, while they may be there till midnight and I quote unquote get to leave, I'm getting paid less because I'm working less. I'm, on a longer career track. I'm still doing my job, but it's just at a different level for this period of time. So I think you've got to sort of just talk to yourself and understand that, there are pros and cons, and you've made trade-offs. And eventually people sort of get used to it. They understand, oh, Robin's not here today. Today's her day off. And I think the flip side is that, again, you've got to be flexible. So if something comes up on a day that you're, quote unquote, not in the office, you've got to have the ability, whether it's childcare, or what have you, to be able to pick up if something's going on, and with technology today, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got to get back on that train and get into the office. I can sit, in my pajamas and log on to our system, and it's as if I'm in the office and nobody knows physically where I am. It's about getting the work done and having, the people that you work with know that they can count on you in an emergency, in a situation where they need you. And they also need to be respectful. Look, if something's not going on and somebody's calling you up on your day off just to sort of, test you, that's not good either. I mean, they need to respect the boundaries, but also, the flip side is that you need to have flexibility.
It's the combination of boundaries and flexibility. There's certain things where there's boundaries. I'm not going to take these types of calls on these days or these times, but there's also the flexibility that if something happens, and as long as it's not a regular something, you're going to jump in and you're going to help out the team because you're a part of the team.
Exactly. And you've got to show that you are, that's one way of showing that you're committed. The ability to do things when somebody needs you, even if it's not your quote unquote, day in the office. And again, technology has made that so much easier than when I first started. I mean, I remember, when I first went part-time, sitting there thinking, oh, I can't wait for the day that I can sit at home and be on the computer. And it wasn't like that at the time. Now, certainly it is. And with, smartphones and all of that, you can check your email all the time and you can respond and you can sort of weigh what's an emergency and what's not. What do I need to respond to today and what can wait till I'm in the office tomorrow? You have to be able to make those assessments, or, your whole part-time or flex time arrangement could sort of be eroded if somebody's always, kind of taking advantage of the days that you're not there. So it's a balancing act. And I think over time, those kinds of issues really, work themselves out most of the time.
So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about expectations of women in the workplace and what women can do today to change some of those expectations. We've talked a little bit about an expectation of women having to fit into a box or to act a certain way. And I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that generations that, preceded my generation, so the generation, above me, the women that have quote unquote, made it, they have the success, they are in the leadership positions, I think that they, had to sort of wear the pantsuit in order to succeed. So they weren't really succeeding necessarily as, women on their own terms, utilizing the skills that make women great. They were, sort of fitting themselves into the role of what's expected of how would a man act in this situation. And I think there's a little bit of a shift now as the next generations come up, and certainly millennials, they want to succeed on their own terms. And I think there's more of an understanding that what makes women different can be, capitalized on, and that, those are skills that add value. So, acting like a man doesn't really change what's going on in the boardroom, because the skills and the characteristics and the traits that women have that add that innovation and diversity of thought, if you're acting like a man, you're not getting the benefit of that. So I think there's been a little bit of a shift now in women recognizing that what they bring to the table, has value and can increase productivity. And as I said, innovation, and make your corporation better. That concept of diversity of thought is a big one. So I think that's one thing that has, expectations sort of women in the workplace has changed. I think women need to really carve their own paths. They need to have confidence, they need to take risks, and they need to really tout their accomplishments. Women oftentimes, are afraid to say what they've done. And they oftentimes are afraid to sort of, make the ask women sometimes sort of sit back and think that what they've done stands on its own and that should sort of raise them to the next level. Whereas men are out there telling everybody, I did this and I did this and I want to move up and I want this job and I want this. I think that women need to understand that it's okay to fail sometimes, because I think out of failure, breeds the most success. If you're afraid to fail, you're going to be afraid to take risks. And that sort of thwarts your progress. Women often wait until all the stars are lined up, or they, will look at a job opening, let's say, and they'll look at what's required and they'll say, okay, well, I have, A, B, C, and D, but I'm not so good on E, F, G, and I definitely don't have H. There's no way I'm applying for this. Whereas men will be like, yes, I can do this. I'm applying. So I think women need to not wait till they have all the stars lined up. I think they need to sometimes take, calculated risks and have the confidence to say, okay, I've got 3/4 of what this job, is asking for. I'm going to figure out the other quarter. I can do this. And I think that that's something that's important now in the workplace. And women, shouldn't be afraid to lead. They shouldn't be afraid to show, as I said, how their skills help the organization as a whole. And women that are more senior really do need to help younger women come up. The concept of, mentors and particularly sponsors is huge, because if you look around at, who really is leading, it is still, by a vast, vast majority, it is still men. So the couple of women that have gotten up to the top really need to reach back and help the younger women get there and show them, that they can succeed.
I love the phrase, stop wearing the pantsuit to succeed. That was great.
You don't have to wear a pantsuit, It is huge now, the skills that women have and what women bring, to companies, into the boardrooms, into the meetings, into the C-suites. I mean, that is what diversity and inclusion really is all about. It's one thing to have the diversity, which is really the numbers, how many women do you have in an organization? But the inclusion piece is allowing them to come into these meetings, allow them into the boardrooms, allow them into the C-suite so they can help, make the company better. And that's really, what this is about, because studies show that diversity of thought is huge for helping companies, increase their sales, their productivity, their efficiency, all of those things.
So if there was one thing you could tell women out there right now to do to stop wearing the pantsuit to succeed, what would that one thing be?
I mean, I think it's to have confidence, because with that comes the ability to tout your accomplishments, the ability to make the ask. I think inherent in confidence is a lot of these components. So I think if you believe in yourself, those other things will flow from it, and you can actually be yourself, out in the business world.
It's great guidance. So you were talking a little bit about it, mentoring, a little bit about sponsoring. And let's say there's women who are listening right now who want to launch a women's leadership initiative within their organization. Mm-hmm. And they want to get started right now.
Okay.
What are some of the things that they should be doing right now as to get that kicked off?
Well, we've done some research, and there's really 6 basic factors that are needed to make a women's initiative successful. So if you sort of lay the groundwork the right way, you've got obviously a much better chance of having a successful women's initiative. So you need to make sure that you've got engagement of senior management. The engagement of people at the top is very, very important. And that message, through the Women's Initiative, has to get trickled down, to the employees. They've got to understand what the commitment is. You need the involvement and support of men. And I'm not a big believer in, diversity training that crosses both genders, in the sense that I think that women need training on a different level, that they have different skills and they need different training, because the way women communicate and negotiate and network and develop business, all of those things are different than men. So I don't think it's a one size fits all when it comes to training, but I do believe that you need the support and participation of men. So men should be invited so that they can understand what are some of the issues that women face. The third piece is understanding how the culture of your work environment can impede women's progress. So if you've got, a situation where women's viewpoints aren't, taken seriously, or you've got a 24/7, you've got to be sitting at your desk 24/7, which may be difficult for some women. You've got to look at how your culture impacts women's success. The fourth piece is knowing your numbers at each level. And I can talk a little bit about how you set goals and how you do assessments, because that is really the crux of how to get your women's initiative off the ground. You've got to recognize that women's leadership and communication styles are different, which is what we were talking about a little bit before. And you've got to have real, substantive, meaningful programming that gives women the tools to succeed. That is really very, very important. So we talked about the softer side, and the harder side of, giving women the harder side of those soft skills is really what women need now. So I think the wine events and the yoga events and all those things are great, for networking, but you're really not going to move the ball unless you're really training people, on how to deal with these issues. The first thing you want to do, is set your goals. And one way to do that is really through a very, very detailed assessment. So, you really want to look at the number of women at each stage up the pipeline so that you can see, are there, leaks? Are people leaving at certain times? You want to look at how many women are promoted, what are performance ratings, how many women are included, on pitch teams and meetings and high profile engagement. So there's a very data-driven piece to it. You're going to want to do focus group interviews, sit men and women down and really get a sense of what role do they see, a gender initiative playing in the company? What are their programming interests? What do they think senior management thinks? What's the perception of work-life integration and all of those issues? And then the last assessment piece really is, what is the philosophy of your organization? What is the personality? What are your business goals? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Because one of the things you want to think about, which is incredibly important, is how to tie, the gender diversity initiative to the strategic plan and the business goals of the organization. You've got to be able to show the intrinsic value that the initiative is going to add to the overall, business goals, the strategic objectives of the company, the culture, because the whole, crux of this is that your women's initiative can provide, value and a return on investment if it's done properly. And that's really the key. It's got to be done right, or you're spinning your wheels and, management looks and says, well, we're not doing anything. Why aren't we getting more numbers? Why aren't we retaining more women? Why aren't we attracting more women? Why aren't more women succeeding? If you don't have it set up right and you don't have that substance to it, you're sort of throwing money away. And then of course you need a budget, you'd need to put a committee together, and you've got to launch it properly so that everybody's excited and engaged in what's going on. So that's sort of the beginning of how you would launch it.
There's some great guidance in there. I want to ask a follow-up question. This works very well for an organization that is enlightened, an organization that is forward-thinking. What if the organization is, let's put it back a few years, back when you were at the Turnaround Management Association, and maybe they weren't as enlightened at the time. And you have someone who's listening right now who's trying to get engagement, who's trying to get people to understand the importance of this. What type of guidance would you give them?
I think you've got to go to senior management. One of the important factors is this sort of value proposition, and we talk about this at Trellis. It is really the business case for why you need, a women's initiative. We talked about how having diversity of thought and diversity of, ideas really creates corporate innovation. It's got a positive impact. There are a lot of business reasons why women's initiatives are necessary. You can really change, how your business is looked at in the marketplace. So there's corporate reputation pieces to it. And if you have a solid framework where women can and do succeed, it creates loyalty, it creates engagement. You're able to attract more women and retain more women. I know at my law firm, if a woman leaves, we've got to replace that person. And it costs money to recruit. It costs money to retrain. Wouldn't you rather have a culture where women feel supported, where they feel that they can stay, where they feel that they are empowered and valued and respected by their peers? I mean, all of those things help a company. And there are real dollars involved. If you're recruiting and retraining, I mean, there is a significant dollar figure that's attached to that. If you give women the tools to succeed, they will. If you teach them how to develop business, they will. And that brings more clients, customers, revenue, into your organization. So there are business reasons why it's important to have a women's initiative. And again, I stress that if you're going to pitch to your senior management that we want to get together and we want to have a wine tasting, they may not have the same reaction as if you come in armed with all of the research that shows how this women's initiative is going to add value to the company. That's really the important thing. It's how it's going to add value and a return on investment to the overall business objectives, how it makes that company better. I think that piece is often missing because people think, okay, we're going to have a women's initiative and we're going to do, a yoga event, but they're not understanding how having substance makes that difference.
Well, Robin, this has been great. You've been inspirational. You've given great guidance. As we close here, could you let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you if they want to, and any closing remarks that you may have?
I mean, certainly, I would encourage anybody, to go on to the Trellis website, and it's trellisconsultingllc.com. You can reach me there. I'm happy to answer any questions. I really think that we have opportunities here. Look, I mean, it's certainly possible, regardless of what your political views are. We're in a world right now where our next president, could be a woman, which is really a very interesting sort of top-down concept of how the vision of women in leadership positions is changing. But the reality is that, at the top 500, Fortune 500 companies, there are only 22 women CEOs. That's 4.4%. So we clearly, have a long way to go, irrespective of whether our next president is a woman, which is great progress, but we clearly have a long way to go before women are viewed as equals, in these leadership positions. So I think we all, have a responsibility to help each other, to push each other forward, to make, senior management and other people in positions of power really understand what women need to succeed. And that once we get there, we really can, change the way the business world looks and the way it runs and make a huge positive impact, going forward.
I really appreciate you taking the time. We'll include all your contact information in the show notes. And Robin, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, the business ones and the personal ones. And I know that our listeners are going to learn a lot from it. So thanks again. And I will talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. For more information like this, please go to progressivewomensleadership.com. Have a great day.